All right, on this episode of Bowks Talking Bouts, excited to be talking to an individual coming off of a victory at Rizin 40, quite the emphatic one, a knockout in the first round, a sub 40-second one taking place on the New Year's Eve card, and yeah, a great victory for Johnny Case over Nobumitsu Osawa, and great having Johnny on the show to talk a bit about that. How's everything going today, man?
No, everything's going good, man. Everything's going good. Wrestling season here in Iowa coming to an end. My boys been hitting it pretty hard this year, so that's been most of my time. But yeah, life's good, man. I'm happy.
Well, that must be an interesting thing to see then, just sort of like their own, journey through the martial arts, as it were. Like, can you kind of talk about that? That must be very, interesting and fulfilling in its own way, I would think.
Oh man, it's the best thing as a father, to see your kids go out there and to strive at something that's so like incredibly hard, and go out there and not only go out there and do well, but go out there and fail and come back and persevere. And as a father, to see that out of their boys, it's just nothing makes them more proud and more fulfilled than that. So yeah, it's awesome. And wrestling, man, I don't care what sport it is. Wrestling's got to be the hardest combat sport, even harder than MMA, in my opinion, because, it's two guys going out there and grinding head to head. And the moment one person, lets off the gas, boom, you're on your back, match is over. So anybody that, grows up wrestling knows that it's one of the best tools a boy can have learning how to become a man.
Yeah, for sure, and I would think that probably also extended to, your own journey as well. Like, I would think that your journey in wrestling maybe you're thinking, like, oh yeah, it'd be good to get my kids into this. Like, was it something you sort of suggested, or was it, like, something they kind of came to you with initially and wanted to try out?
It definitely played its part. So wrestling was the only sport I had in my life where it was, like, a real sport, It was, like, football, baseball, all that stuff just felt like playing a game of Monopoly, winning and losing was just kind of like, okay, cool, or well, whatever. But wrestling was the one thing where it was like, it's on you. When you win, it's the most amazing feeling. And when you lose, it's the most horrible feeling, You just go out there and get your ass kicked in front of all your friends and family. And that teaches you humility, how to be humble and how to, learn from your mistakes and pick yourself up after you fall. And so wrestling has always been something that was instilled in my life, but I was kind of a wild, lost kid, I also raced motocross, too, so I was always kind of like that kid that was, like, seeking a thrill, kind of living on the edge kind of a style. So, naturally, I just kind of started taking to fighting. I planned on wrestling in college, and went to school for about a week, and then decided that MMA is what I wanted to do with my life.
Yeah, and quite a journey so far in the sport, and the latest chapter of that, definitely an interesting one. I mean, I'm kind of curious about, like, the late replacement kind of dynamic, because, like I said from the top, you obviously ended up getting, quite a quick victory, so it would seem from that the adaptation to the opponent switch was pretty smooth. But, what were the thoughts kind of like, switching up the opponents in relative, close proximity to the event? Like, were there, like, different amendments to your approach that you had to, I guess, bring to the forefront, or maybe not so much?
Not so much. Like, I kind of approach the fight just like every other fight, and I obviously study a little bit about what my opponent's strengths are, what their weaknesses are, but, that's such a small part. It all comes down to what I do, my preparation, and how I go out there and how I perform, and I know how to go out there and perform to the best of my ability, and wherever the fight goes, I'm able to adjust, and that doesn't matter who the opponent is. And that just, so obviously the difference between, Gustavo versus Tyson was just the pressure. Gustavo has got that Wanderlei Silva style, straightforward pressure, going to be in your face, and he's going to make it a dogfight. Whereas I knew Tyson was a little more calculated with his striking, was going to, try to work out his counters. And, so that's really the only difference between, like, opponent changes at the last minute.
Yeah, and it was the first, New Year's Eve appearance in a little while. I was noticing, like, in about 3 some odd years since the Tofik Musayev fight. How did it feel to, get, like, re-interwoven into the fabric of, like, the New Year's Eve tradition and everything?
Man, yeah, that Rizin's just been so amazing with me. You know, that from the very first fight I had with Yachi, that was a New Year's Eve card. You know, the only New Year's Eve cards I missed were due to COVID. You know, so I've been fortunate enough to fight on quite a bit of these cards, and you know, just to have that kind of, you know, support and that kind of, you know, backing by Rizin, man, there's nothing that feels better, you know. And the Japanese fans fighting in Saitama on New Year's Eve, that's legendary stuff, you know. And it feels really good to be a part of that, you know, more so than any place I've ever been in my career.
Yeah, I saw you had a post like a bit after the fight talking about how it's like such a beautiful journey and everything, and it's not necessarily oriented to like reaching a particular destination, but just getting to, you know, experience great things and meet awesome people along the way. So it kind of seemed like another fun chapter within all of that as well.
Yeah, man. Like, the thing is, so I've never lost 3 in a row in my entire career, you know, and I was on a 3-fight losing streak. You know, granted, 2 of them were to, you know, world champions, but it's like you get to a point where it's like, do I still have it? Do I still have what it takes to compete at the top level? You know, and I was kind of the point where I was like, you know, if I go into this fight and I lose, like, I might not have a career, you know? I might be done fighting, you know, and maybe the game just passed me by, you know? So I had those thoughts. And so, you know, I gave it like every other fight, went out there, tried my best, put in a great camp, and went out there. And, you know, I think all that pressure, maybe just, I knew my back was against the wall and I wasn't done fighting. And when I'm done fighting, I'm going to go out on my terms and nobody else's terms. So, you know, I just went out there and performed.
Yeah, and I wasn't too sure on that necessarily, because as much as you had been on the 3-fight specific, you know, losing skid in MMA, I just didn't know how the sentiment might have felt, because you also have been, you know, concurrently doing well in boxing. So, like, you really felt like a pretty pronounced sense of relief, I would have to imagine. I mean, if you're talking to the scale of, oh, maybe I might be, you know, done within mixed martial arts, like, I would think that this would have been a tremendous, like, you know, affirming and cathartic kind of victory, I'd imagine.
Most definitely. And like, just this whole experience, man, just like having Satoshi invite me out to train with him to get ready. And, you know, just the things like, you know, when I lost to Satoshi, like when I finally got the chance, you know, after COVID, after everything that happened, and I didn't know if I was ever going to get back to Japan and fight again, you know? And then I finally get to fight, and not only is it, you know, back in Japan, it's everything, but it's also a guy that I beat, and it's for the world title. Everything I've ever wanted, you know what I mean? And not only that, I already beat the guy. So, in my mind, there's nothing in the world that's going to stop me from becoming a world champion, you know? And I truly put in the best camp of my life. When I fought Satoshi the second time, that was the best version of myself I think I've ever been. And, you know, to go out there and still lose, it was, you know, it really hurt me. It really took a lot out of me. And, you know, and I got to the point where it was like, man, if I'm not a champion, then who am I, you know? And if I'm a nobody, then what the hell am I doing in a sport full of killers, you know? And it just, going there and talking with Satoshi, it allowed me to kind of switch my mindset, you know? It's like, instead of that mindset of like, well, if I'm not a champion, then I'm a nobody and I might as well hang it up. Instead, it was like, you know, no. Like, I do this because I love to fight, because I'm good at it, because I enjoy the lifestyle, and that's enough, you know? And if I'm ever a world champion, well, then I'll get to that point when I come to it. But for now, just fighting, winning fights, getting paid, enjoying my family, that's everything I ever wanted anyway.
Yeah, and I mean, it really shows how much, like, the mentality is, like, such a huge factor in the whole thing. Like, you can have all the physical attributes in the world, but just can be, like, a residual kind of thing sometimes. Like, I was seeing a chat you had with, you know, John Hyun Ko, where that almost seemed to be the dynamic in the Koji Takeda loss, and not to take anything away from Takeda, obviously, but, like, maybe more of a byproduct of, like, I guess being deflated from, like, the title bid not panning out. So it just really shows how the momentum can build, whether positive or negative, in this sport.
Yeah, most definitely, man. The Takeda, and that's it too, because exactly, not taking anything away from Takeda. Takeda's a freaking warrior, you know. But after that fight, it was like, okay, she goes like, hey, you want another fight? You want to get paid? You haven't fought, and you know, you've been sitting on for COVID. And you know, me, I was like kind of 1 foot in, like a lot of the fire in my heart was kind of taken out, you know. I was like, fuck, like, sure. I mean, and they offered me the fight, and I was like, yeah, you know, on paper, I'll kick the shit out of this guy, right? Like, but I didn't take into account the one thing that is the most important thing in a fight, and that's heart, and that's will to fight, you know. And I was in there just to get paid that night, and he was there willing to die, and that's why he won the fight. So that just goes to show fighting. You can have all the physical attributes. You could be 10 times more skilled, but if you don't have the fire in your heart and willing to stand and, impose your will, then you're not going to get very far,
Yeah, for sure. Some great insights, no doubt. But, I mean, your last fight kind of interwoven into that, Rizin versus Bellator kind of cross-promotional effort and stuff like that. And, I mean, what were your thoughts on some of the, bigger fights across that? Because, I mean, as much as it was the dynamic of Bellator getting the sweep, I felt like in the context of each of the fights, each guy had like a pretty good account of themselves, large in part. Like, what were your thoughts on some of the bigger, like, Rizin versus Bellator fights and that whole thing?
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing, too, because I was there, I was there the night, and I was in the venue with all the emotion, and I'm a little biased, you know what I mean? But from what I saw ringside, I thought, the Takeda fight was such a good fight. It was such a close fight, but I thought Takeda finished the fight a lot stronger than his opponent did. So I thought that fight could have been, it was definitely a split decision, very close fight. I thought that fight could have been awarded to Takeda. And then Choi against Archuleta, I thought no doubt, like, Choi won the fight because, he had him in a couple Darce chokes. Like, as far as, like, finishing the fight and attacking stuff, whether it was the submissions or, he was constantly, I think he had more attacks throughout the fight, so I give the fight to him. The Horiguchi fight, I think that they called that one, right? Obviously, versus Hiromasa. Then, the Kleber fight, again, I think Pitbull probably won that fight, but had Kleber been, taking a little more risk, maybe he could have got that one. And then, I think, and this one's hard because I'm biased too, but I think Satoshi honestly won the fight against AJ, spent more time, spent the whole second round on his back, so I don't know. It's, again, I'm biased and, I got skin in the game, so I'm always going to see what I want to see as far as my guys winning the fight, but that was my honest take from it.
Just such an interesting time for like the lightweight ranks because, I mean, you're talking about how you thought Satoshi won, and it does seem like there's some people who did have that perception too, but at the same time, it's like there's this kind of outside looming guy who has like a victory over the champion, and as we're talking about, it seems like there's good parity within the division, like certain guys having good statement wins over each other and everything like that, so should be like a fun, lightweight picture to follow, at least with like the title going forward in Rizin.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, it's very interesting indeed, because I saw the rankings, or I saw somebody say something about it, and it said that they thought that I was like third in the division. And I was like, well, who's number two? And they're like, well, Takeda, of course. But I'm like, well, I mean, it's hard to argue because he's got a win over me, but I wouldn't say that either, and there's a lot of guys, I think Gustavo, I think him and I honestly would be going for the second and third spot in my opinion. But yeah, but there's still so many guys that are still coming into, like, oh man, there's a bunch of, what the hell is that guy's name coming from Bellator? Spike Carlisle, but there's a lot of good talents coming in, so it's definitely not short of any good matchups.
Yeah, I would think that would be exciting for you, just like with the cross-promotional dynamics, just probably facilitates you getting to fight, I mean, obviously a great pool with Rizin too, but now you get to dip into two pools potentially, depending on how, all of this plays out. Like, would that be something that would hold any interest for you in the future, like maybe being part of Team Rizin if it made sense, or doing some kind of crossover effort?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. Like, I'm a company man. Rizin has been so good to me. As far as like all the UFC, PFL, like Rizin's the one that's like treated me the best. And like as an employee, obviously you're gonna want to go where it's best. So I'll be with Rizin, as long as they'll have me. But the good thing about Rizin is, like, you can take fights otherwise, as long as you're not under contract with anybody. Like, they allow me to do pro boxing. So it's a pretty silly thing not to go with Rizin. There's just so many. They treat me so well. There's so many. There's way more benefits than there are negatives, and and I know that they work with Bellator as well. So the chance of fighting with Bellator would be a real possibility as well.
Yeah, and that's the cool thing about it, because like you said, you can still maintain like a core kind of presence within Rizin, but also outside opportunities with, Bellator potentially, like you're saying, and, also boxing. And to that point, I'm kind of curious because you've been active in the boxing space. Like you were the last time we were talking, but I mean, racking up even more wins, and seems like you really have like an aptitude for that. Like, do you think your next contest is going to be like gloved boxing or perhaps MMA, you're thinking?
Well, I was hoping to actually come back and get another boxing fight, right around this time, after my Rizin fight, but boxing works a lot different with like promotions and stuff, and, the guys I was going to fight with was going to be around like May or June. And so I'm hoping to, if it's May or June, I'm doing an MMA fight instead. But yeah, no, boxing is still something I'm very interested in. It's just, it's all about making the right decisions early on, and but how like boxing is like 10 and 0 whatever, like the manager kind of like guides the fighter instead of like the fighter paying the manager. So it's just a little slower process, and I'll take more fights when I can get them. But MMA is my main focus right now. I'm right at the tip top of the mountain. As far as my career goes, and this will be my 17th year as a professional MMA fighter this year. And I'm so close to achieving the goal, all the goals I've ever wanted to achieve in the sport, to be a world champion, and then we can worry about chasing a world title in boxing.
Well, that's kind of interesting, like how you're talking about this. It's almost like you're looking to, cement yourself as like a champion in Rizin by like the end of the year. And I would think that if that, Gustavo fight gets rebooked and everything, like you were talking about the perception of where both of you guys are at in the division among like people who ardently follow Rizin. So I would think that could be like a potential title eliminator. Is that kind of how you're also looking at it? Is that like a fair characterization?
Yeah, but now here's where it gets complicated, because it's like, I'm 1-1 with Satoshi, right? He's like a brother to me now, brought me out there, and it's like being a world champion means that I'd have to fight him again, and it's like, man, I really don't want to have to fight a brother, and so it's like, I don't know if by the end of the year I'll be ready, but, I don't know exactly what Satoshi has planned for his MMA career, but, I kind of just have grace with this, and like when it's my time to fight, I'll fight. Satoshi knows I want to be a champion too, and he knows I got a family, and so, if that happens and we have to fight each other, then I know he'll understand, and we can set our friendship aside and handle our business like men. But I'd rather not have that fight, especially by the end of the year, So who knows? I'd like to take it slow. Let's maybe get another win, and then I don't know what Gustavo's healing timeline is, but maybe I get a win, Gustavo comes back, gets a fight, then we fight, so maybe a year or two down the line. Who knows?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it seems like a good training situation recently with like bonsai jiu-jitsu and everything like that. I mean, such a great space, I would think. Like, I mean, obviously Satoshi, a great guy to work with, but another Rizin champion, and Kleber Koike, like I would think you'd be getting in like some really, great work and stuff like that. And I mean, you have a great history of that. Like, I know you worked at like the MMA lab and Extreme Couture previously, but I would think bonsai is even adding some, new skills and everything to what you bring to the table.
Oh, without a doubt, man. And that's the thing, like I knew Satoshi was good. Like, when I fought him, when I was going to prepare to fight him and stuff, I knew he was good. But then I got to train with the guy. And, man, I trained at a lot of gyms in the world with a lot of really good, fighters, really good jiu-jitsu players. And Satoshi is in a league all of his own. He's like a real special, unique, Damian Maya kind of a jiu-jitsu guy. So to go in there and work with those guys, I mean, even the blue belts at his gym were just phenomenal, and they're always attacking. And it gave my style a lot of fits, because I'm more of like a catch wrestler looking to control and pin and punch. And it was like, man, I couldn't hold a guy down. For the first month I was there, I couldn't even hold their blue belts down. They were just constantly attacking. So, yeah, I mean, definitely I learned a lot, but the main thing is just, I was able to work on a lot of personal things, and being able to talk with Satoshi, and, kind of work it out, like brothers in arms, warriors of the guild, sitting by the fire, helping each other out after battle. So it was really good, spiritually, more so than technically.
Yeah, I'd be curious to get your insights, because now you're like so, direct to it now. I was trying to explain this to a buddy of mine named Matt Wells, who's like recently getting into Rizin and trying to figure out like the lay of the land, and I'm like describing how like Kleber and Roberto's jiu-jitsu is just really different than a lot of guys out there, like in a few different ways, like in as far as how like the guard pull is like a legitimate thing when they do it, and there's like a lot of nuance to it, and in MMA context, and it seems like when they snap on like triangles or arm bars, it's like a bear trap almost. Like, what do you think is different about their jiu-jitsu maybe as compared to some other people out there?
Their attention to detail, the way that they do the little things perfectly, almost mechanically like a machine. It's just they get to their perfect position, they lock the position, and there's no space for scrambling. There's no anything. They're just perfect. They've just drilled and drilled and drilled, and they know their bodies, and they know how to put their bodies in positions and lock positions before I'm able to entice a scramble or before anybody can really defend it.
Yeah, I appreciate the insights. Just such a beautiful thing to watch, like when those guys are out there doing their thing, and a cool thought that you're taking in those skills and adding that to what you're doing as well. But I just had I guess like a last question here, in as far as like we were talking about competing next, and it seems like you're gravitating towards MMA. Like, would the desired next fight be getting on that Rizin card there, because it looks like they sent out like a press release for Rizin 41 the other day. So is that kind of like maybe the desired next fight you'd like to take, kind of thing, like getting a spot on that card?
Yeah, most definitely. So is that the one that's in Hawaii? I heard the Rizin 41.
It looks like Rizin 41 is in Osaka, but looks like there's like a schedule of a few events. It looks like it looks like there's like a couple events in April and then an early event in May from what I'm seeing so far. It looks like the Hawaii one is tentatively set for end of June from what I'm seeing on the schedule.
Okay. Well, I don't know if I can really relation it, but I heard that they were doing a card in Hawaii.
It's out there.
Yeah, so that's what I'm trying to land. So my sons, I have two sons, and they've never been to one of my big, world stage level fights. And I think Hawaii would be real easy to do that. Not taking them out of the country, and so I'm hoping for that. I'm hoping for Hawaii, and then it'll be a good time for my boys to see me fight, and then we'll see where we're at after that.
Yeah, I kind of skimmed that press release, actually. That gets me excited. The thought of me being tangibly able to go and check something out like that, too, is pretty cool. Maybe I'll float over there and everything. So, no, that's awesome. Seems like a lot of great potential options this year, man. But you've been really good with your time. I want to be mindful of the rest of your schedule and what you're getting up to, though, Johnny. So, to that point, is there anything you might want to add as like a parting thought as we're kind of wrapping up here, man?
No, man, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much. And I really apologize for yesterday. And, dude, if you can make it out to Hawaii, you should come out, man. It'd be an honor to meet you and, meet my boys. And, we talk after that.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot of ingredients there. Rizin, Hawaii, a lot of it sounds really fun. So, yeah, I'm definitely thinking about it. So, yeah, that would be cool, man.
Absolutely. Yeah, it'd be an honor, brother. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, thank you, man. A great win at Rizin 40, and I appreciate the insights on that, and also everything you have on the go and looking to, actualize into reality going forward. So, yeah, whenever the next fight gets set up, we'll have to, have another chat. But until then, you have a good rest of your day there, man.
Heck yeah, brother. You too. Talk to you later.